Undercover video captures Colorado's Attorney General at a lavish event in Hawaii, paid for in part by corporations that many state attorneys general are suing and investigating. And tonight only on CBS 4, how companies are paying big bucks for access to those top prosecutors.
An investigation by political specialist Sean Boyd looks at just how cozy those relationships have become. And Sean, this involves more than just Colorado's Attorney General.
An organization called the Attorney General Alliance, made up of 48 attorneys general, is at the center of all this. Colorado AG Phil Weiser chairs the organization. It's a private club that corporations and lobbyist organizations pay tens of thousands of dollars to belong to. Their membership buys them access to lavish events where they can schmooze the top legal officers for state government, individuals who have sole discretion over whether to sue, settle, or investigate them. CBS 4 received video of one of the events from a Republican group. While its motives are political, the events in question involve AGs from both parties. They've been happening quietly for years. Now, for the first time, someone with inside knowledge of the gatherings is speaking out in an exclusive interview with CBS 4. Grand Wailea Resort in Maui is billed as a tropical oceanfront paradise with luxurious accommodations that start at $1,000 a night. But when the Attorney General Alliance held its annual conference here last summer, AGs didn't have to pay a dime. Their stay compliments of taxpayers and the organization's sponsors, which includes some of the nation's biggest lobbying firms and corporations like Google, Facebook, Juul, and Pfizer, all of which AGs were suing at the time.
To me, it's ethics 101 that you don't take advantage of a situation that's being funded by organizations that you're suing or investigating.
Chris Toth is former executive director of the National Association of Attorneys General, a quasi-governmental organization that provides training and resources for AGs, unlike the AG Alliance, which he says exists primarily to give corporate executives and lobbyists access to AGs. According to the organization's internal recruiting manual, the more corporate sponsors give, the more access they get, with sponsorships starting at $10,000. For years, Toth says he sounded an alarm about the growing influence of corporate money in the AG community. Now he's retired and speaking publicly for the first time.
Any person would look at this and say, you know what, that's not right anymore. If an attorney I hired was hanging out and taking things from the person I'm suing.
An independent audit of the organization's finances shows about 70% of its funding last year, nearly $5 million, came from corporate sponsors, many of which also donate to AG's political campaigns. Colorado's AG Phil Weiser held a fundraiser in Maui the day after the conference. Weiser, who chairs the organization, has sued, settled, or is currently in litigation with more than a dozen corporate sponsors.
Phil Weiser was aware of my views. He had different views.
Weiser declined an interview with CBS 4, but in a statement defended the organization, saying it allows AGs to collaborate on issues of common interest. Former Republican AG Cynthia Kaufman, who endorsed Weiser's re-election bid, says events like this are about problem solving, not influence peddling.
We had a cryptocurrency seminar, and I can assure you even the brightest AGs could not have taught what the cryptocurrency market is about. You have to have people who actually function in that world and understand it. I have had corporations say, this helped me be a better corporate citizen and do my accounting and compliance because I heard you all talk about what your expectations were.
Kaufman and Weiser say they paid for everything but food and drink when they attended the annual conference in Hawaii, but they didn't have to under state law.
It's proven to be one of the most difficult things to regulate.
Bill Leone, former chair of the state's Independent Ethics Commission, says commissioners received a complaint in a similar case a few years ago.
And it was hard to put your finger on either an ethical rule or a law that was violated by doing it. But it was distasteful, and it's gotten even worse. The whole idea of paying for access and paying for what they perceive to be influence is what makes the average person look at these things and say, this is part of a rigged system. So I would look, if Phil were sitting here today, I'd say, Phil, don't do it.
Kaufman pointed skeptics to multi-billion-dollar settlements with corporate sponsors.
You have only to look at the amount of money for which they had to settle and pay for their behavior to see that there was not favoritism.
Toss says it's the appearance of impropriety that concerns him.
Could some of these settlements been higher? Perhaps, perhaps not. But when you're taking things from the people you're suing and investigating, it certainly creates a very, very troubling perception.
Especially, he says, when you're the people's attorney and the people you represent are excluded from the gatherings.
If you're an advocate for survivors of opioids, you used to at least be able to get in the meeting by paying the same fee everybody else paid. But now essentially you're locked out.
Anyone in the public has access to an attorney general to be able to call the office and say, I'd like an appointment with General Kaufman or General Weiser to talk about this particular issue.
Kaufman says conferences she attended included opposing viewpoints, but the agenda for the Maui conference shows a full day of cannabis panels with industry advocates, but no opponents. Kaufman and Weiser say AGs don't court sponsors and they have no influence on lawsuits or settlements. But Toss says they don't pay tens of thousands of dollars for nothing.
Is it really worth violating the public trust and taking money from people that are being sued and investigated so you can have better food, better swag bags, better social events? Is it really worth that? And I think clearly the answer is no.
But for now, there's no law against it.
What really has to happen is the voters have to put their foot down and say, we don't like that. We don't want our public officials to play in a rigged game. We want them to serve our interests. And, if they punish that behavior, then it'll stop.
I emailed several corporate sponsors. Only Pfizer responded with a statement saying its political giving is meant to preserve and further the incentives for innovation and protect and expand access to medicines and vaccines. To suggest otherwise, it says, would be inaccurate and misleading. The deputy director of the AG Alliance also sent me a statement saying the organization's events are free to academics and nonprofits, although she wouldn't provide me with any names of any of those who've attended these events.
So we saw Phil Weiser. We heard from Cynthia Kaufman. Do we know how many Colorado AGs over the years have gone to this thing?
Kaufman says 6. 3 Republicans, 3 Democrats. But this organization started about 30 years ago. It's just a group of Western AGs who were focused on issues like water and natural resources and tribal rights. She says it really evolved into this national organization during her tenure. And Weiser, he's chaired it for a couple years now and still was unwilling to go on camera and talk about this funding from corporations and lobbyist groups.
All right, important report there. Thank you so much, Sean.
Thank you.